Hello again, everybody. This is James Bartley, and you're watching and listening to the Cosmic Switchboard Show. Today, we have old friend Judith Kwoba back. Judith and I thought it was a good time to, discuss several key issues. And, Judith really needs no introduction. Judith, welcome back.
Yeah, thank you, James. Thanks for having me. Yeah, interesting times. And I thought it's a subject that is not really talked about very much. And but I think it is important to understand all the craziness that we are going through. And that is the digital financial complex. And I guess we can all agree here in this system, money equals influence. Yeah. And if you combine money with data, yeah, then you even have more influence. Yeah, the data of personal data of certain people and so on and so forth. For instance, very interesting, that goes into the subject of quantum computing and algorithms and so forth. Amazon says that they know 3 weeks before the woman knows that she is pregnant, and they know it because of what she is buying. So, yeah.
I experienced that several years back, just to interject very briefly, because I guess I fell into a pattern of the kinds of books I was looking for, mostly military history, ancient to modern, right? And so after a while, all these suggestions, like it figured out based on the types of subjects that the particular commanders I was interested in, right? Suddenly all these recommendations are popping up. I like that on my list. It basically figured out the stuff that I was interested in. And that was several years ago, probably 10 years ago by now.
Yeah. So, and many will recall we had, towards the end of the 90s, we had a financial crisis, but that crisis was not too bad. Several giant banks, they pulled together and they bought what was bad in the market, and it was resolved like that. A couple of years later, 2007, 2008, yeah, well, then the banks couldn't do it anymore, and the taxpayer had to jump in. Yeah, and I remember that was just around the time when Obama was elected, and then he gave a press conference saying, yeah, I get it. It is not popular to bail out the big banks and yeah, but of course, they have been bailed out. Then we saw even little bail-ins with Cyprus, where above 100,000 euros, yeah, the money was simply kept. And so all these, yeah, these various financial problems had different solutions. And in the beginning of 2020, another financial crisis was looming. And then what happened? Yeah, we went into a health crisis. Yeah, and with it came, of course, money printing. Yeah, because there were stimmies that were going out here in Germany. Of course, those people that couldn't work because the shops had to close down and what have you, they, of course, they got supported, and the money printing machine was rebooted. And so who are these big players that we are talking about here? It is on the financial side, it is Blackrock and Vanguard. Yeah, and Vanguard, that is usually used by old money, so-called royalty and so forth. Yeah, and we have on the digital side, we have Alphabet, Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, and Facebook. Yeah. So now BlackRock and Vanguard, these two corporations together, they have assets, they manage assets of $16.6 trillion. Yeah. And I give a little example, a comparison to Germany. The GDP of Germany is 3.8 trillion. Yeah. But to achieve that, that is, yeah, the combined achievement of 35 million workers in the workforce, yeah, that are producing that type of GDP. But BlackRock and Vanguard, they employ 35,000 people. Yeah, you see, and that is meaning we have private companies that have that are managing more money than single states have. And of course, there is power accumulated there. Yeah, thinking that that has no influence on anything, that's really naive. Yeah. So now the digital the IT complex that controls the flow of data. Yeah. So and why, how do they manage to influence governmental decisions? If we recall, after the financial crisis, 2007, 2008, we had big problems here with Greece. And then there were elections, and Syriza, that was one of the parties that was competing. And they said, no, enough with austerity, enough with these crazy decisions. We want to do a different course. Syriza got elected, but what happened? The European Commission, we had this troika, European Commission, IMF, and ECB. Yeah, and those were the entities that were deciding a lot of those financial regulations during that time. So Syriza was elected, and then the European Commission told the ECB to cut the money flow to Greece completely. They did it for a week. They cut them off from all financial flows. And guess what? Syriza did exactly what the Troika wanted. You know what I mean? Yeah. So all what they said before they were elected was null and void. They did all the austerity measures that were given to them. And we also have to keep in mind, BlackRock is advisor for the Federal Reserve and for the ECB. Yeah. So once again, even there is their influence. And that means that is how they do it. Yeah, they just cut you off. Or the IT companies, they could cut you off from all data streams. So, and that shows how little influence the politicians really have. Yeah, and I'm so tired of this bickering about Democrats and Republicans and this party and that party, green and independent and violet, or, or whatever it is. My goodness, can we finally get over this? Because these are not the people that are making the decisions. Even if, like that example with Greece, even if they want to do something that is benefiting the people, no. There are other guys Yeah, so I'm really, really tired of that, and Trump and Biden and Harris and this and that and Rand Paul, and my goodness, it is so redundant.
It's like a tragic comedy. They roll out these characters who, like, if you're watching Saturday Night Live or some corny, bad comedy show, they would roll out these kind of characters, like in a farce or something. But they turn out to be the people they parade in front of you as politicians, lawmakers, decision makers, when they have no, like you say, no say in decision making at all. They're all bought and paid for. We're seeing this a lot now in the, we've seen it for a long time, but in the sporting world, the big shot sporting heroes from decades ago, legends, and the actors and actresses, of course, they, when push comes to shove, they've got so much dirt on all those people, celebrities of one form or another, that they'll just make them do tricks like an animal, right? At any one time, they can mobilize all of them to start saying things. This courageous, just to interject for a second, NFL, National Football League football player Aaron Rodgers recently just spoke his mind without giving a rip, which is what he should do. And then, of course, the Twitterverse like erupts. But you know what? His attitude is, who cares? You guys are all scum. And when you look at like Blackrock, and even the name Blackrock has like a Kabbalistic like kind of connotation to it, you know, the black cube, Mecca, and all this other stuff, right? You know, black as in black goo, black as in, there's all kinds of weird connotations. You can go in that direction, but their ability to control such huge assets, control all the financial institutions. They've been leeching these countries for so long with the structural adjustment programs for the International Monetary Fund, the what David Perkins talked about, the economic hitmen that would go and get all these countries indebted and make huge fortunes for the big multinationals. That was just consolidating the empire. Now they've turned all that against the human race in every conceivable way. And what's troubling about the Blackrocks and the Vanguards, and you know, they had the kind of dignified, before it was so blatant with big banks like Goldman Sachs, you know, now they kind of privatize it and turn it into like some kind of fund management thing called BlackRock, but it's really so powerful. So what people have to realize is, yes, at any moment, everything you have in an electronic bank account can be just snatched away. Like what happened in Cyprus, what happened to so many people in Greece. We've seen this pattern over and over again. So the pressure is being applied all across the board. The supply chains are breaking down intentionally. They're shutting down sources of energy and sources of power. It's a form of like collectivization all over again, just like a more high-tech version of it. Slow, I wouldn't say slow motion, but not as extreme as herding people into these collective farms or something, you know, and letting them starve to death, because that's the intention. It is the digital currency system, the monetized debt system. It's a ticking time bomb, right? So we have to be wary of the fact that everything can go pear-shaped. ATMs not working, runs on the banks, the inflation so radical that like hyperinflation kicks in, right? So yeah, it's definitely something that we have to consider.
Yeah. So BlackRock also has this computer network called Aladdin, and that computer network has the biggest financial data on the entire planet. Yeah. So, and in 2018, BlackRock uploaded Aladdin into the Azure cloud of Microsoft, meaning Microsoft has access to all that data as well. Yeah. So it's this combination, you know, information, data, and money. And we see it sometimes in science fiction. The title and the author, it just slipped my mind, but there's a book where somebody said that there are no longer any governments, but 7 corporations are ruling the world, and the human beings are assigned to a certain corporation. Yeah, and whoever wrote that was, I would say very insightful. And also keep in mind, I'm speaking strictly on a 3D level. Yeah, the corporations, the power structure, what is behind the madness. Of course, there are other levels to that. When we go to, let's say alien interests here, I said for a long time that I have the feeling that we are being sold, that there is a change in management, that something is going on here that we probably cannot put our finger on for quite a while.
There are some huge power struggles at a cosmic level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, do you see that too? Yeah. Do you have any idea which factions are quarreling?
Well, just even the reptilians themselves, because they're so fractious and quarrelsome. Like, for example, the Chinese, potentially, I'm not saying this is the case, they may answer to a different set of reptilians, right? I mean, there's this assumption, whether it's valid or not, maybe a part of it is valid, but this notion that one reptilian group controls the whole planet and the whole solar system and this part of the galaxy, well, maybe not. Maybe there are some that are kind of, uneasy allies and just waiting just to stab the other faction in the back. Because even within their own factions, there's a lot of assassinations, there's a lot of like power plays, there's a lot of like, just think of ancient Roman history when everyone was trying to assassinate everyone else to get ahead in life, right? I mean, at the aristocracy level, that's just a garden variety human hybrid version of what the Reps, Anunnaki, Draco Empire, call them what you will, that's what they do. So if there is, it would be better if there were, in a hypothetical scenario, if there were 2 or more competing reptilian Draco factions, rather than one all-powerful, just, because that's really a tough customer to deal with. But if there's 2 or more and it's an uneasy alliance and they have their own internal friction going on, but there's also external pressures being applied, and also the various alliances those factions have with one or more other groups, right? So I like to think, and maybe it's not just wishful thinking, but I'd like to think that there is some friction and acrimony between the various reptilian groups trying to control this planet. And I do think it's quite possible that there is, and I wouldn't say an outside force, probably observing this, drama for countless eons. But I think that there are forces at work waiting for an opening, waiting for a vulnerable, weak moment on one or more factions. And if they can get those factions, that uneasy alliance of reptilians and their cosmic vassals, to quarrel and maybe even break out into, some form of warfare, I think there may be an element of that as well already at play, because it's clear to me that the hybrid plantation managers, the Hillarys, the ones everyone hates, right? And they're just feeding that entity. Just like, oh, we hate you. And she's just like, oh, I love it. It's like louche to her, right? Or whatever entity or entities are, navigating her host body anyway. But there may come a point in time when the reptilian Draco that have been here all along on the surface underground within the solar system, and whatever others that are coming in to reinforce or coming in from the outside, but are still part of this, framework, they may decide, we're sick of the Hillarys, we're sick of all of them, we don't need them anymore. And it could be a combination of that and perhaps the increasing energies from the galactic core, the apparent increase in frequency in the Planet X factor, which in itself may have like big time Anunnaki connotations to it. It's quite possible that a large dwarf sun solar system that's in our solar system now is probably inhabited. And if it is, there may be one or more different races in that mini star system, and they have the capability of coming here and causing problems. Maybe they've done it before. Maybe they're just coming back. Maybe they come back and they say, you know, we leave this place for a blink of an eye to them. And then we come back and it's like, this place is a shambles. We're getting rid of you, right? So there may come a point in time, like for example, the lizard boy governor of California, Gavin Newsom, the word on the street is that, you know, he didn't get a saline. he got what they're trying to give everyone else, right? Yeah. And then a similar story has come out where the wife of like a CEO or executive of Stizer, let's say, the Stizer Corporation, she had mistakenly, you know, not gotten a fake, let's say, not gotten a, you know, an imitation, and she's gone down. And there's some suspicion, rightly so, that maybe that was intentional, like F you know, this is what you get, right? So I'm sure they're tracking down whoever was responsible for that. But, you know, there's resistance all across the board, and it's happening at the cosmic level. There's friction, and there's happening down at the terrestrial level. Like, for example, with New Scum potentially going down, are they just, okay, another day and then the clone will be ready? I mean, I don't know really how they work, right? Will they just keep running out a digital version of him, or, you know, will he just come out with a mask all the time? I mean, we don't know, right? We know the public is stupid, so they can stall that out for as long as they want in the overall scheme of things. But now his auntie, Nancy Pelosi, she's having weird breakdowns on TV. I don't think it's just her drunkenness. I think that there's, you know, I think it's harder for some of these entities to hold their human shape and keep from just going nuts in public in general. So the clock is ticking on them. It's not just on the human or the real heroes and heroines of the human race. It's on them too, because the fundamental concepts are changing. And I think that we have a better ability to adapt to it than they do. They have to terraform the hell out of this planet to like eradicate us, but make it more hospitable for them, so they can be out on the surface during the daytime, right? That's why they want everything dim and all contaminated and stuff. So anyhow, you know, that's just my thoughts on the subject.
Yeah, and I think in general, it's hard to fathom for people what you just mentioned, that some people, they really thrive on negative energy, because, you know, if you are a halfway decent human being, you would have an issue with that the majority of the people hates you. But not only do they not give a shit about that, it's really good for them.
Yeah. Well, they feed off it. It's,
yeah.
And the thing about the economic aspect, getting back to that, with the intentional breakdowns of the supply chains, the farmers being paid or threatened to destroy their crops and foodstuffs, and the prices of everything in the supermarkets already going up. Like I was a fly on the wall around some sheepanoids like recently, just passing through a place, right? And they're all like bewildered. It's like, why are the prices going up so you know, they can't process any of this stuff. And I'm thinking, like, you ain't seen the half of it yet. Just wait till the food riots start, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but those people, it will hit them like a shovel when that comes, because they never bother to do any research, to have even a glimpse how the system works. And for them, it will be very hard. I'm really convinced of that. So now, what is, I think it is safe to say that in general, the big players, they perfectly are aware of the fact that the current financial casino model, because it is a casino, yeah, the derivatives market is so destructive. It's basically nothing else but betting, yeah. And now they are betting on the oil price. And oil is a commodity that is being sold. I think it's the most sold commodity here on Earth. So now they are betting on the oil price that is going up, 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 and then it does. Yeah, I'm not saying that supply and demand has nothing to do with it, but that is a big factor, this betting on prices. And then it manifests in 3D, and you have to pay $10 for a gallon or whatever.
It's just the futures, exchange, like the Chicago's stock exchange, other places where, like for agricultural yields, they basically bet on famine, and somehow they get it right. Place has a drought all of a sudden for a while, and also the local, and federal government start cutting off water supplies and other things. Like, look what the Digital Joe administration is doing now, where they're trying to shut down more pipelines, right? Shut down more flow of oil. And, if you listen to the latest or one of the recent Mike Adams sit reps, he talks about how they're using this technology to suck all the carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, right? See, that's
it's called a tree. It's called a tree, guys. No need to invent it.
This is totally, we've seen this in predictive programming in movies over and over, where the aliens show up and they just have some huge gizmo and it just cores a hole through the, from one side of the earth down to the other side, right? Stuff like that. Well, we're seeing that play out. We've been seeing it with the chemtrails and the aerosol and everything else, right? So it's real terraforming. They really want to get rid of this, right? So,
you know what the reason, just briefly, there is a new series out. It's called Y, the letter Y, The Last Man. Did you hear about that? It's quite interesting. All the male mammals die. It starts with bats, mice, rats, cats, dogs, and the next day, all the male humans drop dead. Okay? Around the world.
Well, please tell me there's one lucky guy who made it, or is it all an all-female cast?
Yes, there is one guy who made it. Yeah. And he has a little monkey that he is running around with, who is also a male, and he made it as well. And yeah, of course, it's the son of the president. And now the son is on the move with a former CIA agent to San Francisco, so that specific scientists can work with him and figure out why he survived and how to reboot the male humans. But when I saw that, I thought, really, guys, now you are telling us all the males are going to drop dead. And I thought, yeah, wow, okay. So anyway, this casino model does not really work. They are aware of it. So they have to think about other ways how to do it. And in books like The Fourth Industrial Revolution, The Big Reset, it has been painted out. And that, of course, has a lot to do with AI. And as we said in the very beginning, the algorithms, the AI is capable of predicting behavior and things that might come up, sometimes a little bit more quickly than humans and sometimes a little bit better, especially if humans do not pay attention. So now, what we also will see is that a lot of jobs will get lost because of AI. I know for a fact that Kühne and Nagel, transportation, then it's the biggest company here with transportation, and they are working on that everything is digitized, automatic, and self-driving cars, and they want to achieve that until 2040. So what does that mean? And 2040 is not that far away. No. So, and what does that mean? And I have looked up the numbers here in Germany because I live here. Makes sense that I look those numbers up. That would mean for Germany that 800, no, for the planet, it would mean 800 million to 1 billion jobs will get lost if that is fully automated. And we would lose, everything, the truck driver, the taxi driver. The taxi driver will be, they will be rooted out by Uber. Yeah, Uber has never made a dime in their entire history, but it doesn't matter. They have Saudi oil money behind them. And the goal is to take over the entire taxi business. So then we have Flixbus here, for instance, in Europe, and Flixbus, you can go for, I don't know, 19 euros from Düsseldorf to Hamburg. Yeah. And so they are taking over as well as for now. And then, of course, taxi drivers, chauffeurs, anything that has to do with that, with transportation, these jobs will be lost. So, but then the problem is, because our economy is consumer driven. So meaning those people who lose their jobs, you have to bring them back somehow as consumers. And that is where the so-called universal basic income comes in. Yeah. And the sinister thing is, I guess in general, people would not go along with it. Let's say China is very far ahead with their EU1, yeah, the central bank money. And that is going on in the US as well. They are not as far ahead as China, but they are doing tests already in the Bahamas with the so-called sand dollar. Yeah, the Federal Reserve is testing that. I guess China could launch the EU1 next week if they wanted to. Yeah? But of course, that money is programmable. That means China, for instance, in a test run, it was programmed that it was only valid for 10 days. So you had 10 days to buy something with it, but you could not, let's say, use it for making a payment on your car or whatever. That was not possible. Also, that money is programmable in terms of region, meaning it could very well be that you can use it in Berlin, but you can't use it in Hamburg. Yeah, and things like that. So meaning that is something that most people probably would not say, oh yes, we would like to have that. But if you kick out millions of their jobs, and then you introduce that central bank money combined with the universal income, then they will appear as humanitarians. Yeah, we have a solution, guys. We will give you a certain amount of money if you are a good slave, of course. Yeah, if you're a dissident, forget about it, or we will switch off your wallet. Yeah, it will probably be a wallet on the smartphone or whatever. And yeah, and then you have the consumers back. Of course, that is a model that in the long run will not work either. Yeah, but it might work for a couple of months. It might even work for a couple of years. We don't know yet. But that is where we are heading. And I still think that the majorities have no idea what is coming down the pike.
The mortal danger they're in. What you described is like a prison population.
Yeah.
If you make enough license plates, like in the old days in the workshop, then you get like, I don't know how much money you get, right? Not much. And then later on, they had the, prisons for profit, not for the prisoners. They made all this high-end, furniture, and they worked on cars or whatever. And they got a pittance, and the corporation, of course, made money. So in a prison system, you get rewarded for being servile, obedient, and stupid, basically. So they throw them a bone, and it's like subsistence living. Like you said, everything's gonna be circumscribed. You can't go beyond a certain point, or your digital currency doesn't work, or whatever, right? So your options, and that's another hallmark of someone who's enslaved compared to someone who's free. It's a free person. Freedoms is not plural, it's just freedom. And you have endless options. You do whatever you want. Slave system, severely circumscribed, limited in time and space, all finances, everything is just really limited. And that's what the sheepanoids, and now because of the treatment so many of them have undergone and will continue to undergo, the system, the economic system, the financial system you described only needs to last a few years, because most of those people thus treated, they just won't be around after a while, right? To even contribute to the economy or consumerism or whatever. So it's just a facade thing. It's clever how they did it. In their arrogance, it's not so much predictive programming. They said, this is what we're going to do to you. Like Escape from New York, right? Where like the city itself is a big, just ghetto prison, right? Everything is run down. You just like a struggle for survival every time you step out into the street. And they don't even need to police you. They just let all the criminals and Antifa and BLM do all that for you, right? So that's what we're going to see. And when the EBT cards, the food stamp cards, everything like that, and when all these so-called benefits dry up, because they're going to make the continued, receipt of these so-called benefits contingent upon undergoing or doing things that you're told to do, right? And you don't do these things, everything dries up. And so it's going to be very, very, unless we turn this around, and of course we will. We just shouldn't, let it go way down the track to the point where it's just going to be an Escape from New York scenario with not as many people.
Yeah. Now that you mentioned New York, another sector that will be digitized. Here it is, we already had it during the lockdowns, that the schools taught via computer, yeah, via Zoom meetings or whatever, yeah. So now, Mr. Cuomo, the fired governor of New York, he hired Eric Schmidt to put that program. to digitize it. Yeah, so that, and that means here in Germany, for instance, 800,000 teachers in Germany would lose their jobs. If you replace it by strictly digital learning, and instead of 800,000, you would probably only need 800 teachers. Yeah. And then you can also sell those buildings. And here the communities, they are debt stricken, they can sell those schools or whatever for a certain amount of money, and then yeah, they can fill up the cash flow like that. And yeah, so the teachers will be out of work as well. Yeah, more or less.
Well, you see how like the cosmic has descended to the surface level, where alien abductees describe, being on board of a ship or a big space station. They see all these human children there, like sitting Indian style on the floor, and they've got like things stuck on their heads or whatever. And then in the underground bases, the big MK operation centers where they have all these humans and kids, they're plugged into some, sensory input thing, whether it's a TV screen they're looking at or diodes stuck to their heads. Now, because of this, big event that we're undergoing, the necessity of having kids isolated or in these indoctrination centers called schools, and everything is Zoom, everything is digital. When they learn, they don't like flip through a book like we did when we were children. They got their faces inches away from computer screens. So they might as well have diodes like stuck into their heads, and they might as well be up on an alien ship, with big hoses and tubes stuck to their noggins. It's really no different in the overall scheme of things. So, and we see it with adults too, how they just sit there and they just look at their phones when they should be having dinner, or, I see people do that when they're walking. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, and they run into things.
They run into things. So what we're seeing now is this mass mind control really coming into fruition. Again, options are limited. Can't have face-to-face teaching. If you have to be in a classroom, they'll put the kids in bubbles, and the teachers will be masked up. Everything's all weird and bizarro,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that also means, of course, if it's only strictly digitized learning, then you do no longer have to maintain the buildings. You can sell them off, make a profit, and yeah. Meaning it's also dire for the teachers. Everybody that is working in transport in some form or fashion, yeah, that is problematic. And I even think they will go as far as doing pilotless planes. Yeah.
Yeah, because so many of the ones that are still flying are hanging on by the seat of their pants because of like recent treatments they've undergone, right? So that's the thing. And the ability to remotely pilot craft has existed for so long. They were beta testing the public when they kept hearing stories of these remotely operated cars that can do things and deliver things, and then we started hearing stories, drones delivering pizzas and what have you. And for the kid indoctrinated, generation X, Y, Z, whatever that they are, through the years, of everything, just to the point where they have no problem using the thumb as a biometric to start their car, right? So to that like group of demographic of people, this is just the next step. They even think it's convenient, for all this stuff, digital cybernetic connections and what have you. So it'll be the combination that we've seen in these movies, where in a dystopic future, everything is run down, everything's seedy. Think of like, Prague or East Berlin in during the Cold War era. Everything is run down, long lines for everything. Well, it's like that, but it'll be techno, 24/7 surveillance, and the
Yeah.
ability to, and they will start to roll out the robotics. So they're already doing that. The robotic dogs, the robotic soldiers, and the robotic vehicles. It's what they showed in the Terminator, uh, with all these automatic devices that, hunted down humans, right? That's waiting in the wings. That's
Yeah.
part of this whole alien. It's not even alien takeover. It's like harvest time, right? This is what they've planned for and now are putting into motion, right? So that's the level that we're dealing at.
Yeah, and there are also plans in the works that robots will be taxed, of course. Yeah.
Gotta tax somebody.
Yeah, exactly. The robots will be taxed, and the framework for that that is already being worked on. So thinking that, yeah.
A robot going to a robot tax preparer to get their taxes done. That would be, that's a comedy skit right there.
Yeah, probably they upload a certain program into the robot so that it can do it by itself.
Well, what's interesting also, and I've never delved into it enough, although I've talked to people whose opinions and viewpoints I highly respect, that did at least delve into the whole digital currency Bitcoin thing, right? And I can see how, okay, if they want to get into that and then they want to use it to their benefit, stay in it for a long time, stay in it for a while and get out, whatever the case may be. I can also see from the perspective of, oh, they're just like prepping and preparing people for this digital future. So the whole Bitcoin thing really is a form of Trojan horse. So I could see both perspectives. But the thing about the way the whole Bitcoin / digital currency system is set up, with the future present that you described of robotics, no more cashiers, no more. I mean, we've been going to automated car washes all this time, right? So we'll come to a point when these humans are surplus to the needs of the reptilians and other aliens. They just don't need them anymore. Everything will be replaced by robotics. Humans will be kept around for purposes of sadistic pleasure and torture or whatever, right? Whatever weird kind of crap they have in mind. So it's exactly what we've seen in these dystopic movies that we've been exposed to for so long, of a world without humans. Everything is automated. So, and what they've done also too, especially with the rollout of all these treatments, is they've essentially plugged in so many people into the Internet of Things. When you consider all the operating systems that are now coursing through their veins and embedding themselves into their noggins and what have you. So we're already well advanced down that track, whereas they're just going to be the Borg collective until they expire, right?
Yeah, when you mentioned Bitcoin, I'm not an expert on Bitcoin or cryptocurrency either, in any way, shape, or form. But what I do know is that money in general is not democratic. It has a tendency to accumulate big time in one place and scarcity in another one. So what you have to do, you have to work against that tendency. And even with Bitcoin, 80% of all Bitcoins there are only 4,000 people who hold that. Yeah, so once again, there is a very minute group who is holding the majority, And so, no, I do not see it as the great liberator. No. Mm-mm.
What also happened was some people were actually making a killing on it. I mean, enough to, if someone would accept the currency, they could buy a house with it, right? But then all of a sudden, some outsiders, but not really outsiders, suddenly just totally took over the cryptocurrency markets and just suddenly just took it over, and it has all the hallmarks of this same banking system that has, basically.
Yeah, and it's fiat as well.
It's fiat as well. It's and how it's inflation as well, because now it's so many units, subunits, right? So it's the same pattern. So it's interesting to watch how this will play out. Not many people these days carry cash around. Everything is digital. So whether they're just going to see the money in their electronic accounts start to dwindle or disappear entirely, or as we're seeing now, the prices of goods and services are going through the roof, and it's so insidious, because it's like, oh, an extra $2 for this item, an extra $3 for that item. Well, that's already $5. You see, if that happens another time, that's $10, and so that's the inflation. It's just the devaluation of the currency. It's taken more of it, but it's all digital instead of in the old days, more paper currency, but it's just more digital to get less quality, less goods, less service. And like you said, everything is becoming automated. And what we're seeing with the impersonal Borg-like nature of the service industry today, right? Where you have been dealing for decades now with, cashiers that can't count and, do simple arithmetic in their heads. So, we were habituated to that. We just took it as, for granted that we're, if we ask at a drive-through, oh, could you include some napkins with that? That, if you don't get napkins, that's the way it is.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You just become habituated and accustomed to this low standard of service. So when everything falls apart in true idiocracy fashion, this is what it's always been like this. It's only worse now.
Yeah, and the central bank money, although it will be digital, has nothing to do with cryptocurrency. It doesn't work the same. It's a control tool, because the idea is that every citizen has only one account, and that account is directly with your central bank. So all your purchases do not only go directly to the central bank, they go to Microsoft, they go to Blackrock, and here we are again. So 7 huge corporations actually are driving this entire thing that is called the fourth industrial revolution.
In the few minutes we got left, and this has been a fascinating discussion, and thank you so much for bringing up these key issues. In the few minutes we got left, and you can really, delve into it in the member section. We hear from these so-called experts, the Chinese are a paper tiger. Their economy is so brittle, everything can fall apart, yada, 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 right? They're so indebted, et cetera, et cetera. Now, you just talked earlier about how they'd set up this central bank of theirs. We know that they've been integral part of the BRIC nations, the basket of currencies they've created as a parallel to it's apparently a parallel to the Rockefeller Rothschild banking system. But my feeling is, from an actual hands-on perspective, the Chinese control so many minerals, so many resources, so many, they invested so much time and effort and money into
Africa.
Africa. It's just where all the riches are. Does it really matter to them if the banking industry worldwide goes belly up? I don't think they're gonna suffer as much as other countries will.
No, what we are seeing right now is a huge rate that is going on before everything will be digitized and so on. Meaning we have scouts here in Germany that are looking for bargains, companies that went belly up during the lockdowns and so on and so forth. So this is the phase where they siphon everything off. And once they have that accumulated, I guess it's time for the next step and bring in some type of collapse and then reappear as the humanitarian savior with a UBI.
And one final thought before we take our break. There's also this persistent notion, maybe there's something to it, maybe not, right? Maybe shades of gray in between, but that somehow the Chinese are subservient to the Rothschild Rockefeller reptile empire. Well, maybe not. Because like I said, they have been a standalone culture essentially for thousands of years. And it's been very, and with the whole esoteric black magic aspects to it too, which rival, and they have their own so-called secret space programs. I don't think the Chinese, from a terrestrial Earth standpoint, play second fiddle to anybody, personally.
It might even be that they work with a whole different faction of aliens. Maybe all governments do to a certain degree. Maybe US has a different ally in the alien world than the Chinese, than the Russians, or whatever it is. But no matter what, it doesn't seem very good. No agenda here, because I wouldn't like to live in China. I find that system horrible. We are going towards that way. And especially in Australia, it's breathtaking, the speed, when they come up with all these crazy ideas. And I sometimes wonder if that is because it's very close to China. I have no idea.
It's power projection. It's not just projecting out to the Western Pacific towards the US, Hawaii, et cetera, et cetera. It's projecting southward to Antarctica too. That's a whole nother, there are technological riches to be had down there. And for decades now, the US has, used Christchurch, New Zealand as a jump off point. But just think of the potential if the Chinese control this whole region, the power projection they would have to take over essentially Antarctica, right? And who knows what's there. But anyhow, we had a fascinating first discussion with a dear friend of the Cosmic Switchboard Show, Judith Kwoba. And Judith, I'm sure our listeners know, but please remind them where they could find you online.
I'm on YouTube, I'm on Odyssey, and my channel is called Night Flight.
And to our dear listeners out there, thank you for watching and listening to the Cosmic Switchboard Show. If you like what we do, if you believe in what we do, please go to thecosmicswitchboard.com, sign up and become a member, and we'll see you at the top of the next segment.